Imagine a scenario for a moment. You are invested in a popular franchise. It may be a TV show, a movie franchise, or even an animated series. You're a big fan, and it's providing the entertainment we all desperately crave in these trying times. You're super hyped for the ending. It airs. It sucks. All of a sudden, all the hype and investment, all the time and energy that you've put into the series, it was all for naught. And now, all the previous content that you loved and enjoyed just isn't the same anymore. That character you were invested in, they're suddenly a different person. Maybe they died in a really unfair or anticlimactic fashion and received no justice. Countless plot points you'd previously adored have now been rendered meaningless. And sure, you tell yourself it's just a story, it isn't real. You can pretend the ending is different, because the entire concept of fiction is that it's telling stories that are pretend. But you just can't shake the disappointment. Has this happened to you? I'm going to assume for a lot of you the answer is yes, because this kinda happens a lot. Most recently, I was reading an article about the leaked final chapter of popular manga series Attack on Titan, and how, while it hasn't turned the entirety of the fanbase against it, it has angered a significant portion to the point where they've started an online petition demanding the ending be changed. As of writing this video, said petition has garnered over 8,000 signatures. Now, if you're wondering what caused the controversy in this particular case, well, Google the petition and that will pretty much explain everything, because rest assured, I'm not going to be spoiling that ending in this video. But the article got me thinking. First, why does this happen so much? And second, is there any way to realistically fix things? The ending of a franchise is the final climax of a story that has presumably gained a large following, the final stroke that completes the picture, and the moment that every fan invested in the series has been waiting for. And once it's out there, there's no taking it back. If it goes down badly, you can't just fix it in the next season or movie. It's done. There is a lot of pressure and expectations to get everything right, and even if things aren't terrible, there's always the risk that you just can't live up to the hype. Stories ending in a disappointing fashion are by no means a new phenomenon, but in the age of online fandom and easy-to-access social media of writers, creators, and fans alike, the effects are becoming a lot more amplified and apparent. When you can easily communicate with fellow fans online, communities are going to be louder and more active, and thus so too are backlashes if something goes horribly wrong. Now, there is a difference between not pleasing every single fan and actively pissing off a large amount of the fanbase. So what makes the latter happen? Well, like all art and media, it really does vary. In some cases, writers can grow tired of their works and may stop putting in effort towards the end. For an example that goes way back, Arthur Conan Doyle famously tried to kill off Sherlock Holmes because he'd gotten so sick of writing the stories and wanted to move on. Alternatively, while some writers may stay invested in finishing their project, it's not unusual for success to sometimes go to some people's heads. Logically, a writer who has seen a great deal of success is likely to get a confidence boost and may be willing to take more risks, while those working alongside them will be less likely to question their decisions given how much they have accomplished. Which can be a problem when a writer's success might be partially down to listening to the advice of others and exercising restraint. Furthermore, nowadays, it seems like there's often pressure to avoid a predictable ending. I've spoken about this before, but it does bear repeating. A lot of modern fiction puts realism and subversion on a bit of a pedestal. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently bad about either. But that said, they do have their place. Dark, gritty realism can help to make a story feel relatable, and that's good. But at the same time, a lot of audiences consume fiction in order to escape reality. And given today's world has slapped us in the face with as much gritty realism as possible, well, again, while it can sometimes be enjoyable to watch and relate to characters who are suffering just as much as we are, a lack of catharsis or satisfaction can still grow very tiresome. Sometimes the best reason to have your character go through pain and suffering is because it does make a happy or even just bittersweet ending a lot more satisfying. Take a character like Sam from Lord of the Rings, for example. He starts off an immensely relatable character, being just a common gardener who gets roped into the adventure. And while he is forced to go through countless difficult trials, we see him pull through and grow as a person and as a hero, to the point where, while he does return to his old life, he's gained the courage and confidence to change for the better. His ending is still a little bittersweet because he does lose his best friend, but the fact that the final shot of the franchise is one of him, possibly the most relatable character to much of the audience, living a happy and content family life that he truly earned, is one that's both extremely satisfying and also very in keeping with the theme of the franchise, being underdog victories and the strength of the small. The key point there being staying true to the theme of a story. An awful lot of endings disappoint because they tend to forget or cast aside the themes that gave the story its identity in the first place, often for the sake of clever swerves. While predictability can be boring, at the same time, sometimes predictable endings are predictable because they're the logical conclusion to the story. When you've set up so much foreshadowing, thematic elements, and development that point in a specific direction, then throwing all that out for the sake of a twist raises the question of why it was even there in the first place, and kind of seems like you're acting as though everything we've loved up to this point was meaningless. And honestly, one of the worst things an ending can do is render the previous story and events pointless. When your audience has grown so invested in a story and its themes and characters, tossing them aside is gonna feel extremely deflating. An ending should be the final piece of the puzzle that completes the picture, not an entirely new picture designed to make the previous one look stupid. Now, here's the thing. Much as it does suck for something you've been so super invested in to end so badly, there's no denying some fans do react badly to these things. I've done an entire video about entitled fandom and the issues that come with fans being so obsessed with the product that they lash out and actually attempt to cause harm when they view the product as being ruined. Let me make it clear, harassing creators is not okay. It's fine to be disappointed and even angry over a bad ending to a franchise, and by all means critique it, but don't send actual threats or harassment to anyone over bad writing. That's an unhealthy level of obsession and entitlement that should never be condoned. But critique is one thing, what about those who are actively asking for endings to be changed and edited? Well, in the past, I would have said it was a fruitless endeavour, because a creator or studio is unlikely to put in the effort of changing an already finished project just to please disappointed fans. But then the Snyder Cut happened. Now, this certainly wasn't the first time a director has created an alternate cut of a movie, but this one was notable for being tied to fan backlash and campaigning. People wanted a different version of Justice League, and they were granted it, and reception has been pretty positive. The Snyder Cut, of course, wasn't changing an ending, but its existence does suggest that in future there may be a possibility that franchises with disappointing endings could be rewritten, re-edited, and re-released. Maybe one day we really could see a better Game of Thrones Season 8, or an actual secret new episode of Sherlock. But while that may sound like an exciting prospect, I can't help but feel it would be a double-edged sword. For starters, re-editing media does run the risk of those working on it being taken advantage of and forced into backbreaking work. We saw this with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Sure, people certainly appreciated the new CGI design, but it was at the expense of the artists forced into crunch periods. Similarly, the notion that a bad film or TV show could be fixed later also does run the risk of following in the footsteps of certain video games publishers. As in, those who think it's perfectly acceptable to allow people to pay for a clearly unfinished product because they can just patch it later. At the end of the day, I'm sure we've all had at least one story or franchise with an ending that let us down. If you ever find yourself especially upset by this, my advice would be this: don't harass the creator, don't expect a better alternative to be produced immediately, don't lash out at people who don't share your views. Instead, consider putting your energy into actually doing something productive and worthwhile in response. You can turn your disappointment into a creative venture. Consider writing a review. Consider writing your own alternative ending. Maybe even consider taking the disappointment as a lesson and writing your own piece of original content that avoids the bad pitfalls that your previous favourite work fell into. I am a firm believer that bad fictional media can teach us as many lessons as good fictional media. Analysing how something fails is a decent way of figuring out how to succeed. Just remember that writing an ending is always going to be hard. It is impossible to please everybody, and living up to hype will always be a difficult uphill battle. What's important is that you stay invested in what you're doing and try to listen to others who are just as invested. Your creative vision is important, but a healthy amount of criticism can save you from unfortunate hold my beer moments. It's tough, but it's not impossible. And if you think you can't accomplish that, then, well, at the very least, just try to leave helpful advice and critique to those who can. Thanks for watching the video. So like I said, many folks do have at least one story or franchise with an ending they found disappointing, so let me know, what was yours? Which franchise let you down and why? Or for a more positive spin, can you think of an example of a franchise that actually ended pretty well? As I said, I quite like the ending of Lord of the Rings, and I do yearn for the days when my biggest critique of an ending is that it just dragged on a bit too long. Anyway, as always, like, share, subscribe and donate to me on Patreon if you can, and I hope to speak to you again soon. Goodbye.